But I was studying the normal way. I was watching videos, reading text, and it wasn't clicking. It's just a lot of information and making sure you remember the right information for the exam. So I realized I needed a better study method, but I didn't find SuperfastCPA until after I took FAR the second time. I'd seen the ads on YouTube, and then I did the 1-hour webinar that you had, the free one. And I was like, oh, this is my life. Like, this is how I studied during school. This makes so much more sense. Why am I not doing that right now?
Yeah.
And that was the main point that I was like, at that point, I was like, I'm just purchasing this because this makes more sense than anything I've ever read anywhere else.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 109 of the CPA Exam Experience podcast from SuperfastCPA. I'm Nate, and in today's interview, you're going to hear me talk with Trisha. So Trisha has a very relatable story where she started studying for the CPA exams. She was putting in a lot of work, was doing everything in her review course, and it still just wasn't working. She wasn't passing sections. So at some point she saw one of our YouTube ads, watched our free 1-hour training, and she said a lot of things clicked. In fact, a lot of things from how she studied back in college, and it just kind of made her realize, I think I'm making the CPA study process harder than it needs to be. So she got our program, and now she's on the podcast, so you know how that went. So in this episode, Trisha is really good at explaining kind of the nuances of the different study strategies that all added up to her passing her exams. So you'll learn a lot from her episode, and her strategies and how she describes them makes them easy to understand and just makes it very logical. So before we get into the interview, I want to mention two things. First, the free study training webinars. Like I said, that's where Trisha started, and pretty much every person you've heard on this podcast, that's the first thing they started with from SuperfastCPA. It's a free 1-hour webinar where we walk through our core strategies so that you can see for yourself how this is so different from the traditional way of using your review course. You will still be using your main review course in your main study sessions, you're just using it differently. So to sign up for one of those free training webinars, you can go to our site at SuperfastCPA.com, or the link will be down in the description of this episode. The second thing is our free podcast giveaway. So each month we give away 3 pairs of Powerbeat Pro headphones to random listeners who have just entered the giveaway. It's your name and email address. That link will be down in the description as well. So with that out of the way, let's get into the interview with Trisha. So, when did you start studying for the first time for your CPA exams?
Yeah, so I signed up in 2019. I'd finished all of my accounting classes in May of 2019, and then I signed up for Becker. I think maybe the January of 2019. That expired on me because I just never got around to it. And I'd started working in tax in September of 2019. And then life happened and I never got through, to taking the exams. And I did purchase an NTS for FAR, and just basically took it end of December 2020, just to, the pandemic happened, and then all those, NTSs that expired, they let them go for a little bit longer, and took that and just didn't pass it. And I had purchased Roger in the meantime once Becker had expired, basically, which I liked that format a little bit better, and I liked those videos better. But I was studying the normal way. I was watching videos, reading text, and it wasn't clicking. And when I had taken FAR the first time, I'd only gotten through half the material. So I definitely didn't pass it. But when I took it, I was like, oh, well, this is typical. I know what this is. I've seen this in school. I've been working on this. I know how to do this. It's just a lot of information and making sure you remember the right information for the exam. So, I realized I need the better study method, but I didn't find SuperfastCPA until after I took FAR the second time. So that's
Okay.
kind of when I started that process. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I pulled up your kind of your final I passed reg, I'm done post in the forum, just to kind of,
Yeah.
because you gave some of your big difference makers. So we'll get to those, what you wrote down. So do you remember what you saw first? Was it a YouTube video or how you found us the first time?
I think it was. I think I'd seen the ads on YouTube, and then I think I finally pressed on one of them, or it might have been on like Facebook or something, some social media site or something.
Yeah.
And then I think and then I did the 1 hour webinar that you had, the free one. And I was like, oh, this is my life. Like, this is how I studied during school. This makes so much more sense. Like, let me
Yeah.
see if this will help, because not passing FAR twice, I was like, I'm not doing it right. Like, I know the material makes sense to me. The questions on the exam make sense to me, but I'm just not passing the exam. So I needed to find just something to get me over
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. That's an kind of a side. That's an interesting comment, just because I hear that from a lot of people when I'm doing these interviews. Like they're doing everything in their review course, watching the videos, reading the text, and they're doing the practice questions, which, with our approach, that's really largely kind of what it is. But for some reason, it's not, I don't know, it's not connecting. So if
yeah.
you can remember, just from the free training webinar, do you remember any ideas specifically that, when you said, okay, that's me, or that really makes sense? Do you remember what those were?
It was definitely, I think, doing the practice problems. Just do the practice problems and don't worry about the lectures and don't worry about reading. I'm like, well, that's what I did in school. That's how I got through college. Like, once I figured out how to get through college, I was like, well, that's what I did. Why am I not doing that right now?
Yeah.
And that was the main point, that I was like, at that point, I was like, I'm just purchasing this, because this just makes more sense than anything I've ever read anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that clicked for me. I was like, let me get the material, let me get the tools and the supplemental tools, and let me start doing this
Okay.
this way.
Okay. Yeah. And so then did you go in and watch the pro videos as well, that kind of
Yeah.
went deeper in the whole study process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then right after I purchased it, I watched the pro videos and then started studying for FAR that way. And I think I purchased Superfast in April, and I took the exam in June. So I only took I guess like a month or so,
Yeah.
month and a half to study. And I passed, and I was like, well, wow, okay, this definitely works. This method works a lot better. And FAR was probably the one where it was, the method I was doing perfectly, like as close to perfect as I could get. I think as I started taking the exams, they got, certain things went away and had to like bring those back a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it works. I mean, this because you were a customer, but the main thing I try to get new customers to do is, okay, watch the pro videos, because that will give you this very proven process to follow from start to finish, and do it exactly for a few weeks. And then once there's watching the strategies, and then there's actually like doing them and having it click in your own mind, like, okay, this is how this works. And then from there, you can kind of customize, and obviously on all these interviews, people have different ways of doing the different things, but the kind of the main pillars still have to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's totally how it works. Just your own process can kind of progress and change as you figure things out, and as long as it's working, right? Like if you're passing sections, who cares what you're doing,
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to ask you, so on your post again, it says the difference makers for me were going through the questions first and not trying to master them. And so, I mean, I know what that means, obviously, but just for the sake of like anyone who's going to listen to this, just kind of explain what you mean by that. Going through the questions, but not trying to master them.
Yeah, so I think Roger's course was definitely helpful in it gave you, the answers. It was for each question or each answer, solution, and it gave you like why that was wrong or why the other one was right. So you could definitely go through problems, read that, and just kind of and get a good idea of why you picked the one you picked and why that's wrong, and then why the one that's correct is correct. So I tried to do as many problems, get as many of those in, but also, at a certain point you realize you might be memorizing them. So it's more just trying to make sure as I'm reading the solution, am I understanding what this is telling me? And that's more important than, did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? I stopped worrying about percentages. I stopped worrying about like how many I got right, how many I got wrong. It was more, does this make sense to me? Is this problem making sense to me? And is this information making sense to me? And so it's more just like I did take a little bit of extra time to, maybe go through solutions, or maybe the 2 hours ran longer, per day. And I actually, when I took the exams, I wasn't working. I had some family issues, and then I was dealing with that, but I was home. So I had the extra time that I could spend to work those out a little bit more. But I also didn't sit there and try to like understand everything exactly. I tried to understand what that question was asking and why I picked the wrong one. Like, what was my brain doing that made me think that was correct? And so it was an active learning more so than just like passively sitting there and just reading through it, maybe not understanding, but making sure and then if if it was something that was a little bit more complicated, I'm like, let me just do a few more problems and see if reading different solutions, because different solutions will give you some different explanations, and sometimes that will click easier than just sitting there trying to like figure out what it's trying to say in that one problem. So that was kind of my process of going through those questions. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation of it. And the key thing you said, well, a few things, but forgetting about what you're scoring or how you're doing, that is another thing that I'm always trying to get across to people. Like when you're using the questions from a lesson as like a learning tool, just like you would use the video lecture, you're not even worried about what you're scoring. That's completely irrelevant because you're doing this for the first time. So it's not, you're not being tracked, or this isn't test day. But that's like for a lot of people, that's just really hard. The video lectures, it's fine for them to use it when they don't know anything about a topic, but you tell them to go to the questions first, and there's just some mental block that like, well, I can't do the questions yet because I don't know this material. So, yeah. And then the other thing you said was basically what you described was letting the different questions in a lesson add layers to your understanding. So like, well, an explanation on one question might not completely clear it up in your mind, but you do a few more and there will be that thing that's like, okay, now I get this. That's, that is just the most effective way to learn a lesson or a topic, is through the questions for that exact reason. Because again, on test day, that's what you're going to be doing, is answering questions.
Yeah. And I think, and using those questions to then, if I'm getting something wrong over and over again, then using that to create the flashcard, because then as you read it, a few times, you can then make a flashcard that's in your own words, which I had trouble with. I will admit, there was some copy and pasting happening in that sometimes, but sometimes those copy and paste, reminded me, okay, well, that obviously didn't click because I just copy and pasted. So go back and figure out why that didn't. How can I make that in my own words, and how can I make that more understandable for me? So I used it. Yeah, the flashcards were a little tricky, but they did help. Just going over it and realizing which topics were difficult for me, because it's usually the same ones that you just over and over again you got wrong. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so in your post here, that was your second point, making flashcards in my own words, and you bolded like in my own words. And so, sorry to have you explain this, but again, for the benefit of people who listen to this.
Yeah.
So when you said you struggled with making flashcards in your own words at first, just how did that go in the beginning? You know, you would, when would you make flashcards? Was it during the daily sets of 30? And then what was your actual process for doing it?
Yeah, so I think the flashcards in the daily sets of 30, basically during review, when I was reviewing those questions that I had practiced, either in the sets of 30 or, sometimes in the practice of one section, if there was something that needed, I felt a flashcard would help me with that. That's when I picked those out. And I think, and it was helpful. I stopped trying to write it all out on note cards. Like, I tend to get tired of that, and then I just quit in the middle, and then I lose the note cards. It's just like, forget it. But I liked, and that was the other thing I liked about Roger's review course, was he had a way you can make your own flashcards in that review course. So I didn't have to go to like Quizlet or another, source to do that. It was in the app, and then I could download the app on my phone, and I had them on my phone at all times. A little bit more, you had to get into the Roger app and then go to the course and then go to flashcards. So it was a little bit more of a process, but it was easier for me. I felt it helped doing it that way. So, and then you could make however many flashcards you wanted. You could separate them out however you wanted, move them around. And so I felt it was helpful for me to do it that way. I think when I made them by section, and I think maybe Reg was the only one I made multiple sections, because it's just like there's a lot of information with that one. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's one of those things that's like a pillar. Whether it's flashcards, or some people have a note-taking system they did since college, whatever it is, some form of putting things that you struggle to understand in your own words is just.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that just makes sense once you hear it the first time. If you explain things in your own words that you struggle with through the whole process, then by the end you have your own weak areas, but in these explanations you've made in your own words, that's obviously going to be extremely helpful in the last few days before an exam.
Yeah. And I think the flashcards helped me reduce it. It helped me reduce the amount of things I was writing, because when I was studying the normal way with the lectures and everything, I'd write down everything. And then it was like, well, that's not all of this, half this information is not even on the exam. So it was helpful when you went to flashcards. It's like, well, it's a reduced, you want a smaller amount of words, you want less information. So it also just mentally got me thinking, how do I make this as succinct as possible and just as efficient as possible? And I think.
And that's a good point, because, yes, if you're taking notes as you're like watching the video lecture on a topic that is new to you, everything will seem important, or you'll end up spending a ton of time writing out everything, and then saving your note-taking or flashcard making for the sets of review questions is extra efficient, because you're only going to be taking notes on things that appeared in question format.
Right.
That's an added benefit I hadn't thought of before. So that's a good idea. So what about, so then your third point was the mini sessions throughout the day. You said I added reminders to my phone to do at least one mini session each hour. I took that advice from another post on the forum. Okay. So you set up alarms to just use the app throughout the day, basically?
Yeah, I didn't realize I could do that until maybe, the last session I was in, but I think that would have been something, it would have been nice to, if I had thought about it, maybe added that reminder, throughout the day. And, I mean, I have an iPhone, so it's pretty easy to set those and like write down. And I was talking to another coach who was like, write down why you want to do it in the reminder, write down why at the point I was like, I need to move out of my house. I need to move out of, I need to get a job. I need to, why. So sometimes those reminders of like maybe adding that also reason why you want to do it, because I will admit I didn't want to always do them. So sometimes, putting that also in the reminder of saying, do this because this is why, might also be helpful to someone. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I do even now, like the main goal I'm trying to work on, I will like write it in what does Apple call it? Just a note on my iPhone, and then screenshot it and make it like my lock screen so that I see that my little paragraph about what I'm trying to work on. But yeah, the why behind things is huge. And I think people, when they're starting, they discount that idea, or it's something they don't even think about because they just think, I just study to pass these. But motivation quickly becomes like a major issue. It's hard to do this for months on end, So, oh, and I was going to ask, what was the form of the mini sessions? Like every hour, did you do the same thing, or did you alternate between the review notes and then quizzes, or how'd you actually do it, or which ones did you use at what times during the day?
yeah, so the review notes I actually read through those before I did, like, because I didn't want to start just questions sometimes. So I would actually review notes. I'd go through probably before each section, just because they're only like maybe 5-10 pages at most,
Right.
for each section, and so that was pretty easy to get through. Read it a little bit, refresh, basically wake my brain up before I start the questions, and then so that's how I use the review notes, and then I'd read through them, maybe at night or something, just when I had a little bit larger chunk of time. And then usually throughout the day when I'm like on the run or something, I mostly did the questions. Those 5 questions were pretty, easy to get through and read the answers to. And then flashcards, flashcards were mostly, once I wrote it out and put it in my own words, I kind of remembered it. So I kind of never really went back to those until maybe like a few days before the exam.
Yeah.
But it was just writing them in my own words just made it click, and then I didn't really look at them as much later. Yeah, and then I kind of also, I wish I had done this earlier, but I started doing it maybe in this, the last 2 exams, was listening to your audio notes instead of reading it myself. I'm like, oh, if I listen to it, that's only 10 minutes, and he's reading it pretty quickly, so then I don't have to because then sometimes your brain wanders and then you're reading the same page like 5 times. So I kind of wish I'd done that earlier too, was read or listen to it instead. I'm more verbal. I like to hear things and say things out loud. Sometimes doesn't process it if I don't hear it verbally. So I'd started doing that later, and I was like, oh, well, this makes, forget reading it, just listen to it. Like it makes my life easier. So yeah.
Now, do you just mean listening to it, or you would look at the notes while the audio was playing? Because a lot of people say that. Is that what you mean, or just listening?
Yeah, listening. When before I did a section, I would listen and follow through, because I'm sitting at a desk, so I could follow through in the in the notes. And I would print it out, the review notes. And then if it was like in the car, then it would just be the audio.
Yeah, gotcha.
So, yeah.
That's a good idea. That's another. Yeah, there's all these different ways people use them, but doing that, listening and reading.
Yeah.
And you would use that to get a big picture overview, is what you're saying, right? Before you jumped into like leases or whatever, you would read leases in the review notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what about your, what did an average day of, let's say a weekday, what did an average day of studying look like from start to finish? Did you study in the mornings, and then, anyways, what did a full day of studying look like?
Yeah. So because I wasn't working, I kind of I could rearrange my day how I wanted to. And I'm not a morning person. I've never been a morning person. So my day started kind of, 10 a.m., 11, a little bit later. But I'd go for like maybe 3 or 4 hours, just because I could do that every day and take my breaks and go do other things when I needed to. And I wasn't worried about work, which is was just an added stress for a lot of people. So It would basically, I would block out when do I want to take the exam, and then I just printed out, month sheets, and I just say, this is when I'm taking it, and I'm set up to take it, and I have my NTS, and this is the date I'm taking it. So how do I get through how many sections do I need to get through, and in what time frame? And generally, I kind of followed that process of just getting through those questions. And if I had extra time, sometimes I get ahead. If I didn't, mostly I didn't get ahead. I got through what I needed to in the right amount of time. There's a little catch up happening later sometimes, but I based it on that exam date, and then what do I need to do each week beforehand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so what about before? So on your first 2 attempts on FAR, were you studying more each day, or what was like the time difference between the two
Oh my gosh.
approaches?
So because I was watching those video lectures, and they were, even when Roger cut them shorter, they were still really long lectures to get through sections. It was taking me I would do 4 hours of just lectures, and then I wouldn't even want to do questions. So I wasn't even doing questions because I was just watching these lectures, and that would be, the questions are probably what I needed to do, but the questions were what was going away when I was studying the normal way. And so just basically going into the questions, I could get the questions out of the way, done, reviewed, and then I could do whatever I needed to the rest of the day. And, and it made life a lot easier. So even if maybe I spent the same amount of time, I was just being more efficient and effective with the time that I was spending on studying. And then I actually felt like I was productive and learned something and remembered something. So it was more motivating than trying to sit there and listen to a lecture. Definitely.
Yeah. No, that's a huge distinction that, like when you sit down to do something and you're having to like it's not fun and just easy, like watching a TV show, takes no mental effort, no mental horsepower. You only have like a certain amount of that, almost like a hourglass or like a battery, like actual mental brain power. And so if you're forcing yourself to sit down for 4 hours and you have to watch these videos, the videos themselves will just like reduce that. Like you said, you would watch 4 hours of videos and then just be so sick of it that you're like, I'll look at the questions later, or whatever you tell yourself, But you don't spend time. Again, it's just that time spent doing what you'll be doing on exam day. Yeah. What about you did kind of mention this. So the overall process, once you figured out this process, you knew it was working, and it was pretty formulaic. You just had to sit down and, do it each day. I'm guessing it just removed a lot of the stress of just worrying about the study process in general. Yeah, definitely. And I felt like I had a plan, like I had a better plan. I was, it was working. And actually, I guess one of the other things that I noted that I realized I did, but I maybe never mentioned it in the forum, was between each section, once I passed a section and was moving on to the next one, I would rewatch the pro videos to kind of get myself back, because sometimes maybe I'd take that break because, you're waiting for the score, and maybe you're not actually studying for the next one because you're waiting for a score. So in that time, and I think all of them except for maybe BEC, I schedule at the end of a block. So I'd only wait like maybe a week to 2 weeks max. And in that time, maybe I'd rewatch the pro videos just to kind of remind myself, what is the process? How do I do this? How do I keep going? And that would give me the to reminder of, okay, well, and then schedule out maybe the next exam. Like, when am I going to take that and use the pro videos and scheduling kind of in that same time frame. I like that. That's a good idea. And again, I tell people, obviously, I'm like, for your own benefit, you paid for this course, like watch those videos, but then also coming back around, like after you've tried implementing it for a few weeks, watching it a second time, it will make sense on like a different level. And then, watching them, I guess you watched them 3 times then after each section. Yeah. That's
Mhm.
that's smart.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you got new things out of it, or it was more just a reminder of, I don't know. Do you feel like you understood things differently each time?
It was kind of just remembering why I was doing all of it and just
Hmm.
how it was supposed to work. Because obviously sometimes in the middle of those, in some of those studying process, like FAR, like it was good. It was perfect. It was as close to perfect as I was going to get. But some of the other ones, maybe, things would fall off
Yeah.
towards the end. You get exhausted, after 3 exams, you're like, I'm done with this. Like, I just want to be
Yeah.
finished. So sometimes it was just reminding yourself why you're doing these things and that these things work, and then how to do it better because maybe you forgot to do something, the next exam over and you're like, oh, I need to bring that one back. Like that one went away. So
Yeah.
maybe, so sometimes, rewatching it was basically to kind of give myself that push of like, this is why you're doing it. And this is this is the best practices. These are your best practices. How do you implement that, like, for the next exam? Because I mean, they are a little different, each of them. So it was
Hmm.
kind of figuring out how those worked in each section.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you kind of alluded to this, but and I was talking. I didn't call earlier today, and we were talking about that same idea where, again, doing all these interviews, a lot of people have kind of mentioned that same idea where they feel like they were maybe things they let certain strategies slip, or just their overall process like wasn't as tight as like the
Mm-hmm.
first time, but they keep passing
Mm-hmm.
sections. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you get really good and efficient at the study process to where you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of do that. And it might even feel
Mm-hmm.
like you're slacking, but you've just gotten
Mm-hmm.
good at the study process itself, and you just keep
Mm-hmm.
going in and passing
Yeah.
sections. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the process itself gets easier because you're good at it after doing it
Yeah.
three times.
Yeah.
Let's see. I've asked you about, so how did you work practice sims into your process?
So practice sims, this is going to be a short answer because I didn't do them at all. BEC, the written communication. I looked at one of the Roger videos. He explained it. I was like, oh, I don't need to be perfect on this. All right, cool. Now that I know what I'm going to do, that's set. I'm not going to
Yeah.
worry about that. And then I think maybe I kind of wished Reg I had done a few more of those sims just because those problems are super long and sometimes the multiple choice doesn't get through all of those. I think Reg was the only one maybe I wish I'd done more of the sim practices. I think that's the only one I did a few of because it kind of, there are a lot of math problems and it kind of the sims helps work through some of those long tables and stuff.
Hmm.
But I didn't really. I just did multiple choice once the multiple choice because that was retaining, that was helping me retain all the information, and the sims were basically just the information in another form and just
Yep.
find the answer, plug it in. So yeah, I know. I think a lot of people ask that in the forum as well, like how do you practice for sims? And I'm like, I didn't really worry about it. I just kind of did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, a surprising number of people say that. Um, the way I describe it in the pro videos is you want to do like enough that you're familiar with the different formats of them, so you know how to like actually fill it out, but they're also dynamic. I mean, you're going to see different stuff on test day, so really it's about kind of your understanding of the material. And like you said, that's kind of how you sum it up, is it's really just MCQs in a more, I don't know, comprehensive or a different format, really, is what it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you honestly would not do them. Did you do like a full mock exam, or you didn't do practice sims, period, not even in your final review?
Nope. Just did multiple choice. Just beat as many multiple choice as I could, and
That's funny.
that was essentially it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It felt more precise and just more efficient for me,
Yeah.
and just getting and I think Roger has fewer problems than a lot of other courses, and even then I didn't even finish all of them, but I just kind of went through them you know over and over again. I just, tried to make sure I didn't, I wasn't memorizing answers, but understanding the material.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that people ask a lot about is they're like, almost like they're scared to go through the questions enough that they're scared to see one twice. And I'm always saying like, yeah, well, you're not trying to memorize the questions, obviously, but if you get to the point where you've seen the questions in your course or in our app like 5 times, that's a good thing, because you will be able to pick those apart on test day because you're just so familiar with this is asking this and this one's similar, but it's actually asking about this. And if you're just like intimately familiar with the context of questions, again, that's what you'll be doing on test day. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think with memorizing them, there were a few, like I remember, because I think, sometimes I think there were a few repeats with audit. There weren't as many questions. So it was just, there was a few repeats in that. And I think for that, it was when I was recognizing it as I was doing it, like as I was doing the problem, like have I seen this again? Do I feel like I've seen this again? All right, well, I know that this is right, but do I feel like, would I have picked that on the exam day? And then kind of recognizing that. Is it my memory or is it, and sometimes it's just you're going through it and you realize, all right, that's memory, but do I agree with what I remember or do I not? And then maybe figuring out why that, instead looking more at the why is that the right answer instead of just picking the right answer, because
Right.
increasing your percentage points in a review course isn't going to do you much on the exam. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
It's kind of that simple. I mean, like, yes, you maybe have memorized this question or you've seen it 4 times, but as long as you know why it's the right answer, it's just always a good reminder. Or yeah, I mean, it just helps you if you just know something exactly because you've seen it 10 times. Again, that just helps you pick out things that might be worded slightly differently on test day or whatever. What about the weekends? Did you study any differently or longer on the weekends, or would you just kind of nail the same 3 to 4 hours and do the same thing?
Yeah, basically try to get in the same 3 to 4 hours, because I was at home. There was a few disruptions that happened on those weekends. So sometimes, maybe I didn't, study one of those days, or I didn't get a chance to do as much as I wanted to. I did try to do something every day, whether it was a mini session, just reading through notes or just something to keep my brain thinking about it, even if I couldn't sit down and do questions for, a couple hours, but just trying to do something. It got tiring towards the end. Once I got to that last exam, I was like, I'm a little done with this, but
Yeah.
it was also a little motivating. Like, okay, this is the last one. Just get it done. So, yeah, it was basically the same. I didn't really have a different, plan for weekends, of what I was going to study, but I did just try to get as much, and get through the material that I had set forth that, I made on my planner, because I didn't want to move these exams. I think the only one I moved was maybe the last exam, and that was because my brother got COVID. And I was like, yeah, we're just moving that one because
Yeah.
don't want to deal with this.
I actually, when I was looking up your old posts, I saw that. And so you just postponed one. So you mentioned your planner. One thing I was going to ask is, when you said you would look through the modules to kind of map out how long to set your test date, I was going to ask, like, what was your did you do that in a spreadsheet, or I guess maybe a planner you mentioned? How did you do that?
The sections, I guess I have an example here. Let me see. I just kind of, yeah, so it could kind of look like that. I just put it in there. Just when is the exam date, and yeah. And then
Nice.
I, put other, if there was something that was happening family-wise, I put that in a different color just to keep note of, like, is there something I'm going to have to do? And then I just, all my study sessions in the review and making the flashcards and the questions, what am I going to get through? So looking at it now, I realized I did a section and then I did a re-review of whatever, all the sections till that date. And, sometimes it happened on 2 different days, so it pushed it a little bit longer, but in general, it's kind of how I just kind of used a little calendar to plan that out. Didn't try to take up, didn't try to sit there and say, how many questions am I going to work on? How many of this am I going to do? Because that'll take up a lot of brain power that you don't need to waste. Just figure out the sections you want to get done each day. And that was really all I did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate of just making things as simple as possible. And I don't know, if someone would have looked at because like every review course kind of does this tracking thing as you go and telling you how ready you are based on these like arbitrary things, like if you watch the video. Anyways, my Wiley would have shown like 10% because I would just go through the questions as soon as I knew, like, okay, I get the general idea, move on. I wouldn't like complete it or take the pre-quiz and the post-quiz to make everything get checked off nice and green or at 100%. Just as simple as possible. And so how did you decide for your Roger lessons, like how many to schedule on one day on your little calendar thing, just based on the number of questions it had?
Just kind of based on the number of questions it had. I kind of did one a day basically, or one every 2 days, just based on it just made my life easier instead of thinking about it. I just kind of, it's that ran into the date I was going to take the exam. Maybe I found the smaller ones and put those together. Or maybe, sometimes you could just look through the sections and which ones make sense going together. Sometimes there were the part 1, part 2, and you just did those together. And so that's kind of how I figured that out. I didn't really. I tried to spend as least amount of time on that because I could sit there planning forever and just never get started.
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
There's a fine line for sure. What about? Let's see. Was your did you save like a week for final review, or did you just kind of keep doing the same process, or what was your version of a final review?
Yeah, so I did that. I scheduled it in. I gave myself like at least 2 days because I was trying to make it into those blocks at the end of those blocks. So sometimes maybe I'd only give myself a couple days because I didn't get, want to go into the next block and wait a whole month to get the exam score. So based on when I started studying and then kind of how that block landed. And I think with FAR, actually, because it was the first one, I was just learning the SuperFast method. That one, I think I had finished, I had just gotten up to the sessions and I didn't even do a mega cram session at all because by the time I figured out how to do, study for it, and then just stuff happened and it just basically ran up to it. And I was like, I'm not passing. I got through the material, but I'm not passing. And I managed, I was like, all right, I didn't even review this. And I passed the exam. So I was like, all right, let's try to so I tried to get review sessions in. I think all of them, I got at least a day or two for the rest of them after that. But sometimes, if life happened and I didn't, I wasn't too worried about it because like I've been reviewing this whole time. So
exactly. And that's the beauty of, I mean, I almost hesitate to say it was like my idea or anything because it's so obvious. It seems so obvious to just review everything, like dedicate a portion of your day to reviewing everything. That just, it just seems like obviously you would do that with content that covers so much stuff. So like doing the daily sets of re-review just solves a lot of problems in advance, including you don't have to do this big final review where you are in a rush to relearn everything because you've been reviewing along the way. Let's see. So we kind of went through everything. Was there anything that, you mentioned, I was going to ask you, did you do anything for the motivation side? Like any just little, and it looks like in your post, you'd said you put sticky notes everywhere, reminding yourself. So tell me about that. How'd you do that?
So definitely, I think especially after passing the first exam, I had this sticky note that said, "You've done this before. You can do this. Like, just do what you've been doing."
Yeah.
The positive reinforcement, essentially, because I can get in my head and it can get negative real quick. So, trying just reminding myself, I've done this before. You know how to do this. You've been studying. You've been preparing. And I think the thinking positive, definitely, if you're sitting there doubting yourself, you're not really looking, you're not focused on what you're doing. So it definitely, I think, Post-its everywhere, bathroom mirror, in my planner, on my desk, on my computer, just saying you've done this before and you can finish this. Yeah. And then, of course, the more you pass, the more exams you pass, it's a confidence builder. But of course, towards the end, you get exhausted because you've been taking them, you've been studying for so long. So it's a little bit of both where, it definitely, you have to find those motivation points and what you can use to keep yourself going.
Yeah.
Because it can get tired.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everyone has their own little version of doing that. Some people don't do anything on that side of things. Some people have told me they put, there's even like a service apparently that you can sign up for that will send you like motivating texts, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think a few people have told me that, or like setting reminders on their phone with kind of like their own motivational thing, kind of like what you said, adding a why to like why you're doing a mini session right now. So yeah, I just think that side of things, like I said, is once you're a few weeks or months into this process, you have to have some way of keeping your head in the game, so to speak.
Yeah, ice cream, motivators at the end of the day when you've gotten through everything.
Yeah.
It's just something, a TV show that maybe you watch after you've finished everything for the day. Just whatever you can do to get yourself to keep going, because after a few exams, it gets exhausting.
Okay, so that's interesting. Would you do kind of actually tell yourself that, like, okay, if I nail my studying today, I can watch this new episode or have ice cream or whatever?
Yeah. I think the ice cream was definitely a motivator, especially towards the end. That last exam, reg is a big one. I took that one last.
Yeah.
And I definitely needed something at the end of the night. I'm like, all right, you can watch this, or, pass the exam and you can watch the entire show that you wanted, binge watch the entire show that you wanted. Right. So it was kind of just something to, and especially towards the end of the day, maybe eating some ice cream, or, I found a chocolate ice cream I could actually eat, and I'm like, yes, okay, non-dairy, like what I like. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Because I mean, the big ones, I think in your probities, you say set the big ones that you want after each section. But I'm like, I need some mini ones towards the end. Like I need something at the end of the day, like a pastry or something, maybe something food related or something small. Like, yeah.
So, and how about the big one? Did you set a big reward for yourself as well?
Yeah. So my mom got me a Coach purse, and Thanksgiving was actually in between BEC and reg, and we went up to Virginia, and I got a massage. So, I got my
nice.
And my big one was, I hadn't seen my friend in Houston, my college roommate, for like 2 years, especially with COVID. And so I saw her at the end, and I was like, yes, got a week of a Houston trip in, it was fun.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So have you not missed the study process, but having it over and having all your time back, I mean, how has that been?
It was good it was amazing to kind of feel like I accomplished something, knowing that I did it and I passed and I got my Wall certificate and everything. It all looks nice. And then I actually got I wasn't working. I actually found a job like a month after, a month after taking the exam. I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's great. So actually, I moved from studying to working. So I have other things taking up my time now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But at least you're not messing around with trying to study after or, while you're working. So,
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we kind of went through everything. What about just, last question I always ask, even if it's stuff we already covered, what would be your top 2 or 3 tips to people that are maybe really struggling with their study process?
Definitely try doing the questions first. You'll feel more confident doing them because you realize especially if you've been working, you've been doing this forever. You've gone through the classes, you know everything. Some of those positive motivators, reminders, I think are really important to keep you going because eventually, even if you don't maybe have a goal list or anything like that, just positive reminders that you know how to do this, you've done this before, that you'll get through it. I think those are really important to have to keep you going. And let's see, is there a third one? Try not to reschedule. I think it's, if you put a deadline, I don't, financially, it's not great to have to take them again. It was hard. It was hard having to pay for them again. But sometimes just taking it, realizing, this material, you just got to get back into, just get that material down a little bit better the next time. If you can just take it and, try to keep that. Don't give yourself months because you'll exhaust yourself by the end, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a huge one. And that's, again, that is what I tell people. Make it short enough that you kind of feel the pressure of it, that every day matters. And then, if something catastrophic happens, that's a different story, but do not reschedule it, or just don't even let yourself think that that's an option. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, Trisha. Well, we've kind of gone through everything, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this call. Obviously, people find these really valuable, and hearing your version of how you did it is going to be really helpful to somebody out there. So I'm glad you found us and that it seemed to help. I'm glad we could be part of your process. So congrats on being done.
Thank you. And the forum was always great to find some motivation. So there's someone going through it with you, so you feel like you're not alone, and that also helps with that motivation part. So
yeah,
and the encouragement.
Yeah, I know. Anything positive helps, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I have one feedback question. Just in your own words, what would you say were the top 2 benefits, the biggest helps that you got from SuperfastCPA? CPA?
The review notes, definitely, I think, because shortening all of that and not having to read books, I think, huge help. And something I could go back to just to find that quick answer, or, find that section. That was definitely, that was helpful. I use that a lot, not having to do it myself, because obviously, that could take up so much time. That was a big one. I really liked the review notes, the audio notes, for me. And then I think the forum definitely gave me some motivation and some, meeting with some other people. And I know I messaged some people, and just that encouragement, I think, was good. And having it off of Facebook, not going on, I deleted apps on my phone and stuff just to reduce the amount of distraction. And I think I forgot to mention that, but and then I think so not having having that forum not on Facebook was definitely a huge benefit.
Okay. You're the first person that said that, and I had this huge internal debate because Facebook, what do they call them? Groups. That's how everyone else does kind of their, there's a group for every course or whatever. But I didn't really
mentorship program that actually, that was on Facebook, and I'd go on there, I'd read it, and then I'd go search for I'd sit there on a newsfeed for hours. I just get super distracted, and it was, while I get it, because the circle, it's not great on a phone. It's easier on a computer to go through and read. So I understand why you'd want something easier on a phone, but I think it helped me keep it separate, because then I wouldn't even be on Facebook to look at anything else. So
that's a big, that's a big point. And that was part of the thing, and just not using Facebook's anyways. There's a bunch of reasons, but That's good to hear. Yeah. Okay. All right, so that was the interview with Trisha. I'm sure you found that very helpful and informative. Now, if you did, please take a second and share the interview or the podcast in general with someone you know who's also working on their CPA exams, because, as I always say, these interviews really are the most helpful free resource available anywhere for people trying to figure out their own CPA study process. So thanks for watching or listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.